It's Thursday again, tell everybody to lock in, grab some popcorn, a drink, and go and throw your AirPods in. It's the 1 hour show, constantly speaking facts. Bulletproof stats are always shooting from Matt. And when it comes to Kyle, you getting numbers and style. Jake is gonna educate you, he has that knowledge on file. Players, step your game up, don't be sluggish or lazy. Or Jimmy J might hit you with a shaky baby. Catch him on YouTube or any podcast platform. Breaking all the news down like Shaq does the backboards. No hot takes, this is where the hottest debate's at. Now kick your feet up, cause it's time for straight facts.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back into another edition of Straight Facts. No James Jackson here today, just me, Jake Alley, and my guy, Stat Matt Robinson, coming to you from the Up On Game Network. Subscribe wherever you find podcasts. They make some great content, whether you're into boxing, you're into shoes, music, pop culture. They're all over the place, so definitely give them a look. But Matt, oh my goodness. I thought that I was dreaming when I looked at my phone. I was like, are we at the NBA trade? Well, my phone's blowing up off the hook with NFL trades. I mean, this is literally
new.
It is something I have never seen before to this magnitude.
5 years ago, it was a big deal that we got Jay Ajayi.
Right.
And now it's like Roquan Smith, Chase Claypool, just like Robert Quinn, just running down the list. It's crazy.
Yeah, and especially the volume in the actual trade deadline day. I think I saw it was an NFL record for trades in a singular day with 10, maybe excluding the draft, though. That seems like, I guess that's split into 3 days. So yeah, that all checks out, but a ton of crazy movement. We have to get into all of it. And, I think I want to start with, this is a bit of a selfish play here by me. So Nyheim Hines goes to the Bills in exchange for Zach Moss and a 5th-round pick heading back to Indy. I've already stated on this podcast how good I think the Bills are, how far I think they can go. And really the one piece that they were missing compared to years past when you look at their offense is that underneath sort of guy. Devin Singletary does a fine job. He's caught 30 balls this year. And he, I think, averages 8 yards per catch. So he's doing okay as a running back.
But he doesn't make, when you watch him, he's like good enough. Like he never surprises you by breaking, like he's in the right spots, but he'll never like break a tackle or like juke someone to get the extra like 4 yards. Like if it's a route that's most likely going to get him 8 yards underneath, he'll get 8 yards.
Yeah, exactly. So he's serviceable, we would call him. But definitely not someone who you would tab as a receiving back. So they bring in Nyheim Hines. And just to give you an idea of how this fits into the offensive blueprint, the Bills running backs have received 21% of the team's targets and average 6.3 yards per reception. Nyheim Hines is a guy who, as I was saying, you look back at the prior years, they had Jamison Crowder. They had Cole Beasley. They had someone who was working the slot and working underneath routes. My theory is that they still have James Cook to run out of the backfield. I think they're going to use Nyheim Hines as sort of a hybrid slot guy almost at times, or almost an exclusive pass catcher. What do you think Nyheim brings to this Bills offense, which was already really, really good?
He's a backbreaker. So the Bills offense is already so difficult to stop. And when you have Diggs and like just you have everything blanketed up and you have the spy to make sure Allen doesn't run, and then you get it to Himes, and then Allen finds Himes for a little 2-yard check down. He breaks a tackle and falls forward for 8 yards. And on 2nd and 10, you think you made a great play, but all of a sudden it's 3rd and 2. And it's just like, what? And it makes, he's the like straw that makes the camel's back break, that breaks the camel's back for defensive coordinators, like flipping out. Like that'll happen, and they just will not know how to stop them, and the defense will just get dejected, and that's when they can attack over the top. It's just another thing you have to think about, and there's so many worries on that Bills offense already.
I wish I still had the stat. When he was a rookie, I pulled a like a comparison stat out of Football Reference where I think in terms of like yards per target, uh, actual targets, and maybe yards per touch or something, if you put all those three together and put his stats as the baseline, players who have done that in a rookie year, it was like him, Marshall Faulk, McCaffrey, Kamara, and a couple other really big name guys. So I believe at his peak, Nyheim Hines, like I don't want to be too offensive in saying this because I do believe Austin Eckler is a much better runner of the football. But what is the difference if you were to give Nyheim Hines the same usage rate that Eckler gets on the Buffalo offense, two different offenses, so it's kind of a fantasy scenario. What is the difference? Like, how different would the stats be? I personally don't think they would be that different.
I think he's like 80% of Austin Eckler.
Which you just got that for Zach Moss in a 5th round pick. Like, you'll take that all day, right?
All day.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be yet to be seen because it may come down to, as you said, the game's on the line. We need to have our best players in there. I don't know if they'll go with Singletary over Hines, but that was a big move for Buffalo. They bring in the pass catching running back, which people thought the James Cook might be. James Cook actually had a pretty good game last week, but not enough to keep them from trading for a running back. Another trade that involved a running back. And this one to me, and you can tell me how you felt, this to me was the biggest shocker of the day. Bradley Chubb goes to Miami for Chase Edmonds, a 1st round pick and a 4th round pick. This was the one where I was like, I think it was Tyreek Hill was like, is this real? Or is this really happening? Or it was something to that effect. I felt the same exact way. How big is this for Miami?
I think I'm not the biggest Bradley Chubb guy, but it's exactly what Miami needs. It's just they can't get pressure on anyone. And Bradley Chubb, I feel like, is much better when he's like surrounded by better players. But he will, when you have nothing, someone who's pretty good can seem great, and I think that's what Bradley Chubb will bring to Miami.
Yeah, it's a great point. And like you said, I mean, his numbers haven't been pop off the page good. They've been solid, 5.5 sacks through 8 games. I don't have the amount of dropbacks that he's faced, but I would imagine based on game script and based on how a lot of those games have played out, not a ton of dropbacks going on, not a ton of offense happening for him to get in there and get those sack opportunities. You mentioned Miami and their inability to get after the quarterback. They are the 4th worst team in terms of pressure percentage, and what pressure percentage is just a combination of how often do you knock down the quarterback, how often do you hurry the quarterback. They're bottom 5 in both of those metrics, makes them 4th worst. And like you said, like the matchup really does, it will become more apparent because the Dolphins are forcing the other team to throw the ball. You're not going to be able to sit there and grind out, 3 and outs, and then you're still running the ball the next drive. That doesn't happen. So personally, I think Bradley Chubb is, I don't know if he changes their trajectory in terms of like their ceiling. Like, does this make them now like, oh, the Dolphins can win the Super Bowl?
No, but there's going to be a really close wild card fight, and every piece helps, and he's a piece that will help.
Yeah, remind me, do you know who is in the hunt for the wild card right now?
Well, like everyone in their division is over 500 or better. The worst is the Patriots in their division. They're at 5-3, and then you have like Cincinnati who's 4-4. You have the Chargers who are 4-3. If you think the Broncos will get better, maybe the Jets are 5-3. So it's a tight wild card race. And you definitely don't want to be playing Buffalo or Kansas City, which is what even if you make the playoffs, that's who the 7 seed's most likely going to be playing. So even just getting to the 6 seed and playing the winner, like a Baltimore or the 5 seed, and you get to play Tennessee, like that's such a huge importance if you want to have a run in the playoffs. And this is a move that's going to help Miami. And remember, Miami hasn't won a playoff game since 2000. So if they win a playoff game, it's their best season in 22 years.
And it would be far worth it. And you know what I found funny is that both of the teams involved in this really big trade immediately made trades to cover up the holes that were created by this big one. Denver trades for our guy Jake Martin. Jake Martin going home. He's from Colorado. So he returns home in exchange for a 4th-round pick. Got sent there from the Jets. And then Mike McDaniel brings in a familiar face to Miami with Jeff Wilson Jr. Again, no one cares about my fantasy team, but it was a cringe moment when I just traded for Raheem Mostert a week ago, and I was celebrating that Chase Edmonds was gone. Ha, you dummies, look at me. And literally by the time I went back to Twitter, the Jeff Wilson Jr. trade was announced. And I was thrashed in the group chat I deserved it. But I just found it very interesting. I mean, and this is kind of epitomizes what we're talking about. And like, I don't know, how often is it that a team trades a 1st-round pick and a good player for another really good player? And then on top of that, like in the same day, trades for their replacements. I just found it insane that went down.
Yeah, it's Chase Edmonds. He's I know fantasy talk. I have him in fantasy, and he's been just like underwhelming. And I never play him, and I never feel like upset about not playing him. He was just like, oh, I needed a running back to fill a hole because Cordero Patterson's on the IL or IR. So and I don't think I started him. He's not that good, but he's like a good player to have. Like on a fantasy sense, he's not that good, but for like a rotation running back, he's definitely serviceable.
Right, he's one of the better.
Ones.
Handcuff type running backs. So we'll see how it plays out. Honestly, it was a harrowing sight when I had just asked you about the wild card, and then I went and looked at the standings and saw the Jets at 5-3. With not only are they 5-3, like I think we talk about public perception, and a lot of that is due to overreaction. The Dolphins saw a huge overcorrection. They have a -17 point differential. The Jets at the same record have a +14 point differential. I was like shook to my core looking at that, but I don't know. What we don't have to talk about the Jets right now. I still think Wilson is not it, and it's going to be coming apart at the seams in short order. But we can move on to another big time shocker. I feel like I'm saying all these are shockers, but this one truly was like one that was not on the radar. Not something I think that many people were talking about. And that is Calvin Ridley going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, becoming the #1 target next year for Trevor Lawrence, still having to sit out for the entire year. Ironically enough, the reason he is sitting out this year is because he bet on his Atlanta Falcons to cover the game. I think it was like a week 10 or 11. I'm not sure. Cover the point spread against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It all comes full circle.
What I don't understand is why does this have to be a trade deadline move? It makes no difference if they do this in the offseason. It's like the Jags GM's like, oh no, I want to do this now. Like, I guess you get him integrated into the team like earlier, but like for a trade deadline move, it's like nice for next year. And I think Atlanta doing a full rebuild, it makes sense for them to just get draft capital because Ridley wasn't going to re-sign there when his contract was up anyway. So surrounding young quarterbacks with good receiving talent is the most important thing you can do to make them develop. And like Lawrence has been really like last year he was horrible, or it was Urban Meyer, I know, but he was really horrible. This year he's had some moment, like he's been bad. He's supposed to be better than this. Hopefully it's just the fact that he's like really young for an NFL second-year quarterback. He like when Joe Burrow was his age, Joe Burrow was having his senior year and like his LSU like best college season ever. So like it's still time. Like
that's so wild to think about. Oh my gosh!
I'm also doing an argument that a lot of Jameis defenders made because Jameis was a similar thing when he came in because he came in really young to the NFL because he was he only played 3 years and then went #1 overall. But there there are just so many silly plays that Lawrence makes where it feels like he doesn't trust anyone. And Ridley's a guy where you can make a quarterback who's like not confident feel comfortable with like a wide receiver screen that gets you 15 yards, and it kind of pads your stats and makes you more confident.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I think a big reason of why they do it midseason is you talk about the expectation with Urban Meyer leaving, the weapons improving. It was the Trevor Lawrence didn't actually look bad. It was the fact that Urban Meyer was, and so like all these things are going around, and then you look up and you're still 2-6 this year. You know, it's not a big jump, albeit they did have the first overall pick last year, but like I think it's a little bit slower of a burn than people had expected for sure. But there are redeeming stats in there. 10th in the league in point differential, 12th in yard differential in terms of how many points did you score, how many yards did you gain versus how many did you let up. So they're still above average in those regards. And then you look at now the lineup that they're building around Lawrence with Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, ETN has emerged, Evan Ingram, still have Marvin Jones, who's a solid player. So I think they're doing some good things to build that team up still. And this is honestly for the value. I mean, when did they pick Calvin Ridley in the real draft? Wasn't he a first-round pick?
Yeah, he was a first-round pick.
I mean, he's a first-round pick who delivered, and he got in trouble for gambling. Yeah, I'll pay a second and a fifth for that, sure.
Well, it's more like you're going to have to give him like the second contract.
Right, but I mean,
not
ideally,
immediately, but soon, yeah.
Yeah, right. I believe after this year, he'll have one more year on his deal. But that's ideally why you're trading for him. You're looking for a centerpiece that you're trying to lock up long-term throughout their prime. He's that. So kudos to the Jaguars for bringing that one home. Atlanta will be very interesting. We're going to talk about some funny stats with Marcus Mariota in just a little bit, which transitions well into another wide receiver trade that was pretty splashy, especially for the Chicago Bears, who moved for Chase Claypool and moved a second-round pick for him. He's having a down year. He's definitely, look at the stats, they are not overwhelming, but I think it has more to do with that Pittsburgh offense. Matt, what do you think he brings to a Bears offense that recently seems to kind of have turned a bit of a corner?
I've been saying all season that it's like complete malpractice that the Bears didn't get Justin Fields any help this offseason in a web playmaker, and they finally did. And I like, you could just copy paste what I said about Lawrence almost, but like Fields is has been put into like the worst quarterback situation for a guy I really thought was really good coming out. Like I wanted the Eagles to trade up for him, like kind of good. And he absolutely, whether it's him getting sacked every other play, whether it's having no wide receivers at all to throw to, having a Chase Claypool, they could be a duo to like in 2 years. They could be, I'm not going to say like Burrow and Chase because that's like really high bar, but if like Burrow and T. Higgins.
Yeah,
like, kind of not like he wouldn't.
Far.
Burrow made a Super Bowl, so like that's it. But I just mean like that level of production.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Especially if they're going to continue to lose games, they devalued their defense, which we'll get to in short order here. But so one thing that I found pretty humorous while looking for stats for Justin Fields to see how this would impact the offense is to look at air yards intended or intended air yards per pass attempt. And at first I was like, okay, this will be a sign. This will be an indicator of teams that go downfield that are able to stretch the field with great efficiency. You know, the teams that come to mind would be Buffalo, Kansas City, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The players who lead this stat, Fields is fourth. And for what it's worth, why that's important that he's fourth, the average depth of target for Chase Claypool has been dropping in turn with his performance and the overall performance of the Steelers offense since he's been a rookie. That rookie year, he put up big numbers. I believe he had a career high in average depth of target around 15.2, if my memory serves me correct.
Roethlisberger's arm was shot, and now he has Kenny Pickett and Trubisky.
And so, exactly, it's been a school of hard knocks over there with the quarterback position in Pittsburgh, and he has paid the price for it. Justin Fields ranks fourth in intended air yards per pass attempt, I believe with 9.8. The players in front of him and him, they're all grouped. These four players are what I'm going to call throw and prayers. They are not afraid to open that thing up downfield, and maybe they're forced to do so because of game script. But when you look at the top four, it is Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Mitch Trubisky, and Justin Fields. That is not a group that you want to be affiliated with. And again, I think the stats a little skewed by all of those guys being down by pretty big digits and having to go down the field even when it may not be open. So I think Claypool helps there. But yeah, I just wonder this year, we saw the Bears put up some pretty good numbers in their last game.
And then New England. They beat New England, they scored, and that didn't beat. They scored 29 against Dallas.
Yeah, they're over their last two games, they're averaging 31 points. So per game. So like, is it feasible with 9 games left?
And they have a good running game.
Exactly. They have Khalil Herbert has really turned a corner, or Armstrong, if you're Colin Cowherd. I don't know if you saw that. He was like, I love that Chicago running back Armstrong. Armstrong is the bet, and was going on and on. There's no one on the Bears named Armstrong, so that was cringe. But yes, a very competent offense. Do you think that there's someone who could make a playoff push, or are they still a team for the future?
The NFC's too good. Like, when I look at struggling contenders, like a bunch of them, like they have the same record as Green Bay. Green Bay is better than them. I think they're like in the Washington tier, where like they might go like 7-10 or 8-9 and be like one of those like teams you see on the graphic like in the hunt, and you go like, huh, they are kind of in the hunt, but like there's no real risk of them making it.
Yeah, preseason odds 144-1 to win the Super Bowl. Would be quite the turnaround if they could do it. I don't think Chase Claypool will turn that ship completely.
Trivia question: who has the biggest preseason odds to ever win the Super Bowl?
I feel like
won it, like the biggest payout.
Yeah, I feel like the answer is going to be the 2017 Eagles.
No. The 1999 Rams.
Oh, that makes sense. Was that before Warner had really...
It was before Warner played it down.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. You know the odds?
Mm-hmm. I forget them. I remember reading it like a while ago.
Pretty good money. The sports books are lucky there was not legal betting. But just to quickly cap off the Bears point here, they also made another big trade, and this one was more notable. Roquan Smith goes to Baltimore for A.J. Klein, the linebacker, and a second-round pick and a fifth-round pick.
150-1.
What was it?
150-1.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So this would be the second highest ever, maybe. Yeah. But Roquan Smith, to me, was a head-scratcher. I know the Bears had been kind of shopping him, saying they had made it clear in the offseason that they weren't going to give him a contract extension. So sometimes actions can speak louder than words. But like for Baltimore, you're going to have to pay Roquan this offseason. And you're also going to have to pay Lamar this offseason. So like it was to me a big time head scratcher.
I had the counter take, which is last year of Lamar's rookie contract. Teams that win Super Bowls win it in the rookie contract, unless you have Brady or, funnily enough, like Matt Stafford.
Matt, this is the stat of all stats in which I believe it's you cannot exceed 13% of the total cap. No quarterback since the turn of the 2000s has won a Super Bowl while making more than 13% of the cap. So it speaks to that. Mm-hmm. Brady was taking pay cuts.
So I view it as Baltimore. They may or may not be committed to Lamar Jackson long term, but this means to me that they're going all in on this season. The NFL doesn't have a dominant team. It might turn out to be the Bills, and we just haven't but like in general, it's kind of ripe for the taking. They're fourth in DVOA. Their 3 losses were because they choked the games away. and they desperately need defensive help because their fourth quarter defense has been abysmal. In the fourth quarter this year, they're averaging 10.4 points given up per fourth quarter, which obviously translates to over 40 points. It's 42 points per game. And even if you take out the 28 in Miami, it's 8 points per game they're giving up, which is 32 points per game, which is still a really bad defense. So they absolutely needed defensive help. Roquan Smith gets them that. And if they want to make a Super Bowl run, then they have to beat one or two of Kansas City, Buffalo. And as their defense was constructed before Roquan Smith, they really didn't have a chance of doing it.
All right. I like the counterpoint. That's a strong counterpoint. It gets hairy. Okay. So like let's keep kicking the can. Let's say they perform really, really, really well and they go to the Super Bowl, they beat one of those teams. You win the Super Bowl even. Are you now saying, okay, it is worth a Super Bowl to, I mean, I'm not the biggest on cap, so I don't even know if it's possible, but like, are you going to be able to pay both of them?
No, you pay Lamar because he's the quarterback.
And then you let Roquan walk. So basically it is a bit of what the Rams did, pushing the chips to the middle, going after Von Miller, almost in a similar move.
Or it's like maybe Lamar like has a really bad playoff game and they lose, and they decide to give Roquan a contract to be like the defensive like stalwart, and then build around a young quarterback that they like.
I think that would be a mistake.
So do I, but I think that's on the table.
For sure. No, it's a fair point. It definitely, I think at this point, all options have to be on the table when you're coming to the end of that window, as we talked about with Lamar. Now it's really time to decide. Like, I mean, it was the same thing when the Eagles had Carson Wentz. Like, do we give him another contract or should we trade him for a whole bunch of picks? That was a real discussion being had. I think maybe you open the door with that with Lamar as well. I think he honestly has earned not to have that happen to him, but business is business. We move on. And now we'll move back. Actually, there was one more of the day that happened on that day. Another big one that I don't want to forget before we go to the ones prior to the trade deadline. TJ Hawkinson in another bit of an eyebrow raiser. Not that it's a bad deal, but I didn't know that TJ Hawkinson was on the block. He goes to Minnesota. 2/4 as well go to Minnesota for a second-round pick and a third-round pick that go to Detroit. How big is this for Kirk Cousins? Because looking back, he likes his tight ends. He has a history of liking his tight ends.
Yeah, Jordan Reed always played great whenever he was healthy in Washington with Kirk. And Cousins is he is a tight end quarterback. I don't even need to look at stats to back that up. He sees an open tight end and he throws it to him. And like he's smart about it. Kirk Cousins, the greatest moment of his career, he threw a game-winning touchdown to Kyle Rudolph against the Saints to win a playoff game on a team that had like Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, and there's the one touch of Case Keenum, and it's just Hawkinson could be unlocked as he's in that top tier of tight ends. He could be like a Dallas Goedert. He could be like right below like the Kelsey Kittle, and better than Darren Waller this year at least.
Right.
And because he's had Jared Goff throw him the ball, and now he gets a pretty good quarterback on a team that has the second best record in the conference. He's got to be really happy.
And he looks like a Viking. You ever see a picture of TJ Hawkinson? He fits in. He fits in really well. And I love the point about, I think Goff, I don't have the stats to back this up either. He is someone who really isolate, the tight end gets no looks in a Jared Goff offense. And I don't have the stats to back that up. But just by Gerald Everett's and Tyler Higbee's performances on that squad, and Hawkinson's, that's what I would co-sign. And then also the stats are there in favor of Kirk Cousins, as you were mentioning. I'd say when you look at comparable tight ends in terms of talent, Kyle Rudolph. I know Irv Smith Jr. has also been there and is there. I think he's banged up right now, but in terms of like really top level talent or someone you would consider a top 10 tight end, Kyle Rudolph averaged 10 yards per catch, saw 82 targets in an offense with Diggs and Thielen. Both Diggs and Thielen had over 100 targets, but Rudolph was still third on the team with 82, which isn't bad. Also, you go back to Kirk's days in Washington, as you said, the last year he was in Washington, I believe the tight end position led the team in targets because Jordan Reed was in and out. Vernon Davis also played for a large stretch. So I believe 104 targets. Crazy. I think that it is going to unlock TJ Hawkinson. And
Hawkinson's already on pace for like 900 receiving yards. And his best year before this year was his second year where he had Stafford and when he had like 800 as a second year guy. So he's kind of breaking out, and his numbers are kind of a little stunted because of the quarterback throwing in the ball. Goff has had like some good passing numbers, but you feel like he could be having like an 1,100 yard season, but it's 900 because it's Jared Goff and the Lions. And you give him Kirk Cousins and he gets to 1,100, and it's like, whoa, it's tight end of 1,100. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think it helps their run game too. Lest we forget, TJ Hawkinson was drafted 8th overall, I believe, in like the real draft, the NFL draft, not my fantasy dynasty draft where we're picking rookies up in the real NFL draft. He was picked within the top 10, and he was billed as a guy who can be an inline blocker as well as a guy who can be a vertical threat as well from the tight end position. He's going to offer you both sides for a team that's already surging. This is a great move. I mean,
okay. I've got the ultimate Kirk Cousins tight end stat.
Oh boy.
So Vernon Davis in 2014, he was 30 and he was kind of older. And he had a great year in 2013 Pro Bowl, and this is when he fell off. But he played 14 games. But he only had 245 receiving yards. The next year, he plays 15 games between Denver and the 49ers. He has a total of 400 receiving yards. Goes to Kirk Cousins and Washington, 648 receiving yards and 583 receiving yards. Like just a yard resurgence for like a dead player out of nowhere.
I don't know if you remember, Matt. This is going to be a deep cut, and no one's going to care about this except for maybe you and I. Do you remember a fifth of those yards on one of those years came against the Eagles on a singular play? Where
that was actually after Cousins was gone.
Was it?
Yeah, it was a Case Keenum throw. I think that's Vernon Davis's last touchdown of his career.
You've outstatted me. Well, that was like a well-met moment, Matt. That was that's what we have you on the pod for. Straighten me out. But we have to get to two final trades here before we move on. And it involves our team, the Eagles, bringing in Robert Quinn, and he's already played a game for the team. This happened, again, before the weekend, before the trade deadline. But they send out a 4th-round pick. They get Robert Quinn. What does that add to this D-line?
I want to say this first, just because I think it's like a kind of player safety issue. It's messed up that he doesn't get a bye week. They've expanded the season to 17 games. If he plays the rest of the games, he's going to play 18 games in a season. The contract should be written that like you're only allowed to play 17 games. Like it wouldn't be a big deal if we didn't play him on Thursday.
Well, wait, but okay. Flip side of that, does he get 18 game checks?
No, I don't know how that works.
Yeah, so
I think you get a game check on your bye week because you're paid weekly over your contract. So,
but we were right. And I see what you're saying. Usually he would have 18 weeks regardless. Yeah. You're right about that. Yeah, actually, we'll have to look into it. I'm not sure what happens on the bye week. It could be a good thing for him. It could be he could like it.
He could have made more money, yeah. So, but Robert Quinn is just a great ad. And I think a lot of people are underselling it, saying it's like Chris Long. It's better than Chris Long. He is a stud, 18 and a half sacks, and they aren't Jason Babin 18 sack years. Like he's been a stud for a long time. And when you have a defensive line rotation that you don't have to play him like 80% of your defensive snaps, you save his energy so he isn't worn out either by the end of the year or by the end of the game. So you get his best for all 4 quarters in the snaps that you need him, and it just makes a good unit better because they're 5th in sacks, they're 6th in pressures, and they don't even blitz much. They're middle of the pack in blitz percentage.
Right. And we knew that something may be in the works with Derek Barnett picking up an injury early in the year. But I agree, and this has been an Eagles philosophy that we've seen them, as you said. Chris Long is an adjacent to this because he's a veteran pass rusher who they brought in on a year where they look like they might go to the Super Bowl as depth on the edge. I do agree that Robert Quinn is far superior a player to when Chris Long, the player Chris Long was when he came to the Eagles. I saw a stat somewhere that he was double teamed an insane amount. I wish I could have saved it and pulled it up. He's double teamed. I think it was like excess of 70% of the snaps that he's rushing the quarterback. So like on the Eagles defense, I don't believe that will be something that you're able to do against him as frequently, especially if, and I'm not hip on the injury news, but I know Jordan Davis was banged up. If you have Fletcher Cox and Jordan Davis going on the interior, you're not going to be able to send help. Maybe you keep a tight end in to chip, or maybe you keep a running back to be an extra pass blocker, but like
it's a high ankle sprain for Davis.
Yeah, so he'll miss
which
a couple.
Is a lot better than I thought it was like a ACL.
Right. Yeah, it looked bad. It looked really bad. But regardless, a really good move for the Eagles, and a move that, I mean, we've talked a lot about the team. They're makes me laugh saying it. They're one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NFL this year.
Second in DVOA behind Buffalo, and the difference is special teams, which is kind of funny.
And that's, as we know, that is always in flux from one week to the next. But the last one I want to hit on before we move on to our panic meter, where we'll look at whether we should be panicking for some teams that have gotten off to rocky starts. But the last player that I want to hit was another one that happened before the trade deadline. Kansas City gets their fast guy, or at least another fast guy, on their offense in Kadarius Toney. They send a 3rd and a 6th round pick. Remember, Kadarius Toney was I believe, was he 12th overall, 11th overall?
I think it was like 20th, because I think they had they traded down and they picked him.
Did they not? I was under the assumption that when the Eagles moved ahead of the Giants to pick a wide receiver, their response after getting Devontae Smith taken in front of them was to take Toney.
But they traded down because that's how Fields got picked.
Gotcha. Oh, you might be right.
20th overall.
So, but he was still a first rounder, right?
Yeah.
So, right. Another example of a place where teams are trying to find plus value by giving someone a fresh place to play. And this is like the greenest of all green pastures, going from MetLife Stadium now to Arrowhead with Patrick Mahomes. I'm personally very, very high on the move. I think I was a big Kadarius Toney believer in college, which is impacting, I think, some of my decision-making, because I just am not sold on what I've seen in New York based on what those offenses were at the time. Am I crazy for thinking that he's going to have like an immediate impact and will be, at the least, by the end of season when they head into the playoffs, at the least, he will be adjacent to what Mecole Hardman is doing for the team in terms of targets, yards, etc.?
Honestly, I don't have a great feel for this. I think this is such a high-pressure situation for Kadarius Toney, because if he doesn't perform with Kansas City, every GM in the league is going to be like, well, if he couldn't do it there, then like he's not worth it. So like he is coming off a hamstring injury. He gets traded from the team that drafted him in his second year. He had a mediocre first year of 430 yards. In the 2 games he played, he didn't even have a receiving yard, 2 catches for none. And it's almost like, what's a bigger argument? Is it like a Gettleman draft pick being bad, or Andy Reid identifying offensive talent? And is this new Giants GM savvy enough to realize that it's a lost cause and just get as much capital for him now as possible? So I think it's obviously it makes a lot of sense for Kansas City to do this. It's a smart risk to take. They have draft picks because of the Tyreek Hill trade. So giving up a third and a sixth, it's not like they're like starving for draft picks. They I think he'll have some moments, but I can't see him being a dynamic player.
So I
At
think
least his first year.
off the bat, and right, there may be some. I mean, it's been a long time since he's really been involved in a week-to-week NFL team. I mean, he's been in and out. He's been injured, and then he had issues with the Giants that ultimately led to him being traded. But the way I view it is, he is now. You say there's a lot of pressure, but I think in many regards, what Andy Reid is known for is putting players. I mean, putting players in a position to succeed. That's what he would say at every single practice. I got to put him in a better position to succeed. But he does truly do a great job of that. So I think Kadarius Toney's a guy who is going to be responsible for less. Not going to be asked to be the number one receiver, go up against the number one cornerback. You'll be put in some situations where schematically you're going to be played to your strengths. You're going to be put in situations where you're running flies against single high coverage. Like, that's what they're going to try and work for him. And I think going to be able to do that to great effect. He'll also return kicks for them, is my guess. I'm really excited. Like, he, and again, I don't want to base too much on college tape that this year is pretty dated, a couple years old. But you cut on that tape and you tell me who he reminds you of. That's all I'm asking. It's exciting to see.
I don't know what that was, a COVID year, his best year. So it's like, but you can't like discount that. I remember Florida was like way better than they should have been that year.
I'll send you a link.
I remember that Florida team. They had I forgot who their quarterback was, but he like, and then the next year he stunk, and then he lost his like draft position.
Right.
Yeah. And I trust Andy Reid's offensive eye, but this could be just like a, hey, screw it, let's see, instead of him seeing like, oh, they're misusing him here and here and here. And
it's funny you say that, because that just reminded me. We can move on after this. Was it Justin Ross was his name, right?
Yeah.
They drafted him as well. So they've already shown that they're willing to take on.
The Bengals who drafted him.
Or no, that was John Ross, right?
John Ross. Yeah, Justin Ross. Yeah.
But Justin Ross was the Clemson receiver who had high billing, had a bunch of injuries.
And then he got hurt. Yeah, and then he got hurt.
And now he's hurt again, and he's right. So point being,
apparently he was doing well in training camp too.
He's on my day. He's stashed away on my dynasty team, man. This is why I'm the best. Anyways, we'll move on to teams who are not doing the best. We talked about it a little earlier. The panic meter, busting it out. And unfortunately, we don't have our guy James Jackson here to enjoy this segment with us. And we'll start with his team. In memory of James, and James not being here, we'll start with his team. The Buccaneers, 3-5. Tom Brady, for maybe the first time in his, definitely the first time in his football career, maybe the first time in his human life that he has ever been visibly dejected. I've never seen Tom Brady mope before for elongated periods. It's happening right now.
The last time he moped was when he fell to the 6th round.
Exactly. And so maybe we should be really scared of what's to come. Are you hitting the panic meter on the $3 and $5 right now?
I am. On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being, oh my gosh, they might miss. They're probably going to miss the playoffs. Versus 1 is like, oh, they could still win the Super Bowl. I'm like a 2.5, because they're going to win the division because the division's horrible. Like, Atlanta's not holding on to the division. They're going to blow another lead to Tom Brady. And the Bucs running game, it's the worst in NFL history if it keeps up. It can't be this bad for this long. Leonard Fournette is having a pretty good season receiving the ball, but on running plays, he's getting stuffed every time. So, like, usually if you look at, Fournette's washed or he's, like, playing hurt, but no, his receiving numbers say, like, the opposite story. So I think it's just, like, a scheming issue that they need to figure out. And maybe Brady would be more in, like, the scheming room to scheme run plays, but he's been busy with his personal life. And Brady's obviously having, like, one of the worst seasons of his career, even though he has 9 touchdowns to 1 pick, which is kind of funny. But like, he's clearly not the guy. He's not making the Brady plays that win games, and he had 92 passer rating. He's just a kind of a run of the mill, pretty good quarterback this year, which is not who Tom Brady is. But they're in the NFC South. They're going to win that division, and I don't trust Todd Bowles, but they could be like a really annoying team. Like they went 8-9, and now they're in the NFC title game. Like what's going on? Like that's just thing I can see.
Yeah, I don't know. The middle of that offensive line, remember, no Ryan Jensen, no Ali Marpet, no Alex Kappa, all gone for various reasons, whether it be injury, retirement, free agency. And that was something that we said preseason was going to hurt them. It has hurt their running game straight up, has hurt Brady's ability to feel comfortable in the pocket. I'm not hitting the panic meter either because of the reasons that you are. I keep saying hitting panic meter as if it's a button. I'm not going high on the panic meter because, as you said, the division's not that difficult. I mean, come on. You got to be able to get past Carolina, Atlanta, New Orleans. Oh, come on. They better win that division. I'm nowhere high on the panic meter for this one. We can move to a team that I think you may have high on the panic meter. That being the 3-4 Rams, 24th in DVOA. Cooper Kupp is still Cooper Kupp, but outside of that, things look much worse this year. Where are you at with the panic meter?
I'm at a 4. Like nothing about their offense looks good. 10 points, 31 points, 20 points, 9 points, 10 points, 24 points, 14 points. And Tampa's defense is good next week. It's really tough for me to see them turning it around and becoming anything close to a contender. I think it's about 50-50 on whether. No, I'm going to go 1. I mean, full 5. Full 5. They're going to miss the playoffs. They're going to miss the playoffs. They're not good enough to make the playoffs in this NFC. They're like the 9th or 10th best team, and they've it's too late for them to become a very good team again.
Yeah, I want to be there with you. I do. I want to go full 5. I think the talent is the only thing that holds it back from me.
Yeah, but I don't think they have good receiving talent other than Cooper Kupp.
Or do they not have it, or are they not utilizing it?
Well, that's the Allen Robinson question that it's hard to know the answer to.
I think Allen Robinson, I don't know. He hasn't shown me anything beyond not producing, which is, I think, largely tied to factors beyond his control. He hasn't shown me anything that he's not this, similar guy to what he's been. And Tyler Higbee's a guy who can catch the ball. I mean, he's no scrub. Ben Skowronek is where you start to get a little iffy. Ben Skowronek's where you start to get a little scared when they are bringing in Cooper Kupp's stunt double to be your wide receiver number 3. But ultimately, you still have a lot of the same talent at the skill positions that got you there. They are in a tough division and a tough conference overall. Yeah, I'm probably up there 3.5, 4. If it continues like this for another week or so, I'll be up there at 5. I mean, it might be too late. It's already you're getting close to the point in the season where you need to separate or be separated from. So we'll see with the Rams. We'll move on to an AFC team now. The Bengals, 4-4 is where they stand. And we talked about them earlier in the year having their ups and downs. They have continued to have their ups and downs with different parts of their team shining. Now with a Jamar Chase injury issue. So lots going on with the Bengals. Where do you have them, Matt?
I'm at a 1.5 to 2. I still think they're good enough. I think the AFC and NFC are very different. I think the AFC is pretty mediocre. I think the NFC is pretty deep. Like if I'm looking at, we were talking about the wild card race earlier. I'm looking at the Jets and I'm looking at the Dolphins. They've already actually beaten the Dolphins, so that's a tiebreaker. And you look at their upcoming schedule, they play Carolina, and then they play the Steelers, and like Tennessee, Kansas City, and then the Browns when I don't know if Watson will be back by then. I think they're good enough to make the playoffs, and I'm pretty comfortable saying they'll make the playoffs. I would be a clean one if they didn't get embarrassed on Monday night. I don't know what that was. That was the most frightening thing all season I've seen from them. Like them choking 2 games early in the season when like a Super Bowl hangover, it's one thing. But middle of the season, like you're in the hunt for your division and you get blown out by the Browns without their quarterback. That's rough.
Yeah, that was what I was going to bring up. Well, I was loosely watching the game. I won't say I watched all of it, but I would flip back onto it every now and again. And the Browns score kept going up. I was shocked by it, completely shocked. I would put them maybe a little higher at a 2 because they've proven to have that rock bottom ability. So I think that they do deserve some panic. Again, we go from one Super Bowl team to last year to the next one, both of them on the panic meter. It is a bit of a Super Bowl hangover, expectations alone. So I think, this is a team that probably will end up making the playoffs. How far do they go? I don't know. But I'm going to put them at a 2, and then we'll go to the last team. Our guy LeVar's Super Bowl pick has looked pretty shaky. The quarterback not saying relax anymore. The Green Bay Packers, the last team that we're going to touch on here at 3 and 5. I mean, all the things we worried about have kind of come to fruition with this team, Matt. I don't know where do you start? Are you relaxing on them, or are they high on the panic meter?
I'm a 4 out of 5 on the panic meter. They're in big trouble. The one saving grace is they get to play Detroit twice, and the Chicago once. So that's 3 wins. I almost like just give them right now. But like they also have to play Dallas and the Eagles, and depending on how you feel about Tennessee and the Vikings, and like Miami in December on Christmas, but that's in Miami, so like that's a much easier game if Miami has to go to Lambeau. But and then the Rams could be like a just battle of we thought they were going to be better. The Packers are they're another team. They don't have the talent. They lost back-to-back games to the Giants and Jets. That's terrifying. And then they lost to Washington. Like those are 3 games in a row you can't lose. Like those are like single game. Like maybe the Giants are good and I'm just in denial, but the Jets and Washington back-to-back is horrible, and it's inexplainable that they lose those games, but they. Tampa, actually, their wins aren't impressive. Chicago, Tampa when they barely scored, and then New England in overtime. So when they got worked by Minnesota.
Yeah, it's very meh. It's meh-inducing. That's like a 5. If
this team did not have Aaron Rodgers, like if you didn't know they had Aaron Rodgers, and you just put like Team X, you showed their game results and their player stats with like John Doe as all the names. You look at it and go like, oh, this isn't a playoff team. So it could get, I don't know. Matt LaFleur might not get fired because it's his
he's been really good.
It's his first time losing 5 games in a regular season.
And that is part of what makes it so shocking. I was panicking on them before the year because I didn't think that they were going to have the weapons and the requisite pieces needed to compete in that division. A little surprised that Minnesota is where they're at. I won't lie. Like it's just shocking.
Actually, I might go full 5. They lost to Washington. I think they're going to lose to Dallas. I think they already lost to the Giants. Those could be the two of the 3 wild cards.
Right.
They lose exactly. The tiebreaker too, and it's tough.
So we're a full 5 on the Packers. Not good over at Lambeau, but we're almost out of time. So we will now move and get some shots up at the buzzer. Matt, do you have anything for us today?
I have one quick one, and then I'm going to move on to the fun one.
Okay.
Like Kyrie Irving should not be playing basketball right now. Just full stop. And that's all I'm going to say. The fun one is Astros fans are the most pathetic people in the world. Like they're it's almost justice. Like all they do is complain about other people accusing of them of cheating, and they're like it's just you see stuff like, can you imagine if like Altuve went over to Bregman and whispered something in his ear? What people would say is like, yeah, because they got caught cheating. That's what happens. Like if a guy who was accused of murder went out buying a bunch of like knives, you'd think twice. You a random guy, you think, oh, he's learning how to be a one of those chefs at the Japanese restaurants.
Hibachi.
Yeah, hibachi, yeah. And so they can't even appreciate winning. In like when they won game 2, they got so mad that Phillies fans were talking about like the hand like pitcher, like all the pitchers do like cheating stuff with that.
Well, that seemed very blatant to me.
No. I know. I'm saying it's not specifically. That's not an Astros like organizational cheating scandal thing. That's a thing that pitchers from all teams do. And it's just whether you're good enough and not getting caught, or making sure your spin rates don't get high enough that the other team, because it's like a whole. And the fact that they celebrate the 2017 title is the most like loser thing. Like, they cheated and you're just like lying to yourself.
Well, it's just a hunk of metal, actually. Who really cares about who wins the?
And like I just like for fun went to like the Astros subreddit, and it's like, well, at least we're not the Dodgers. It was like the Dodgers have a legit World Series. They didn't cheat to win it. It's not their fault in 60 games. And they they lost to the Nationals and they got upset. You lost to that Nationals team. They lost to the Red Sox in the World Series. You lost to the Red Sox team in the LCS. And so they lost to the Braves in the NLCS. You lost to the Braves in the World. Like, the Dodgers have been a better team than the Astros because their World Series is legit. And, like, this arrogance that they have when they should be viewed as, like, until they win a legit title, they're huge chokers because all they do is underperform with great teams.
It would really, really be sweet to beat this team. As Philly fans, it would be incredibly rewarding. My at the buzzer is also along the same lines. I don't know if you saw, but the Philly fans got to my nemesis, Mattress Mac, after game 3. I don't know if you saw this, Matt.
I saw tweets about it.
They were antagonizing him in the concourse to the point where he turned and snapped and pointed his finger, said, F you, obviously saying it, and had to be, this 90-year-old man had to be restrained. I think it was on this podcast where I said how much I'm tired of Mattress Mac and his slimy, like, capitalistic promotions that are then enabled by sports betting and get passed off as like this really cool, oh, he's betting, he's a super fan. He's not a super fan. He's not a super
advertiser.
Fan. Right. He cares not. If it was a different team.
He calls himself Mattress Mac.
Yeah. I mean, that's all you
when he's like in these Astros games. Like, call yourself by your, when you're at a sporting event, that's your name. You're not Mattress Mac anymore.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's gone too far. And it's a shame because he's an old man getting absolutely heckled into the earth by the Philly fans. But you know what? I am so proud. And this brings me to kind of my second point to close out on. I am so proud of the fan base and like overall just like the national coverage, because it's now gone to the point where like when things are bad, it's like, oh, the Philly fans are booing. They're throwing things. They're idiots. They're drunks. And then when they're doing well, it's like, whoa, wow, look at that. They're the best fans in sports. They're amazing. It's like, it can't be both. It's probably somewhere in between. But I have been incredibly impressed by the fan display, by the home field advantage. Haven't lost in the bank yet in the postseason.
I saw a great way to describe Philadelphia fans is that we're both the most obnoxious and the most intelligent sports fans.
That's why we're the most obnoxious. Because no one believes that they're wrong. But yeah, like it showed up on Penn State Brandywine, has like a seismic register, and the Harper and Bohm or the Harper home run showed up on as an earthquake, as seismic activity. So that's, I mean, as a fan, that's what you dream about. So in short order here, by the time you're hearing it, you'll know if they won or lost. But Philly's about an hour away from taking on the Astros in Game 4. But that's all the time that we have here today. It has been a good one. Make sure you check out the Up on Game Network. Our guy LeVar Arrington, Plaxico Burress, TJ Houshmandzadeh. They do a great job with their podcast as well as their entire network. For James Jackson, my guy Stat Matt Robinson, I'm Jake Alley, and these have been the facts.
Straight up, go Phils.